Welcome back to our channel. Today is a fantastic day to dive deep into the latest dramatic developments unfolding in our favorite fictional town. We have some incredibly intense character dynamics to unpack today, so grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let us explore the emotional roller coasters of these beloved residents. Let us get right into the heart of the story. For a long time, the audience has watched Leslie navigate a complex and often painful psychological labyrinth entirely of her own making. Leslie is a character who has been perpetually anchored to her past, unable to untether herself from the romanticized memories of what her life used to be. In order to truly move forward and find any semblance of genuine peace, Leslie is going to be forced to confront the darkest and most uncomfortable corners of her own history. This is not merely about acknowledging past mistakes, it is about a fundamental shattering of her current worldview. This inevitable confrontation means that she must finally, painfully realize that she and Ted are never going to find their way back to each other. The fantasy of their grand reunion is nothing more than an illusion, and watching how she ultimately reaches this devastating but necessary enlightenment will be one of the most compelling narratives of the season. Leslie has spent years desperately holding on to the ghost of her relationship with Ted. In her mind, their love story was merely paused, not ended. Her internal logic has been heavily skewed by the departure of Nicole. Leslie fundamentally believed that because Ted was no longer romantically entangled with Nicole, the universe was naturally clearing the path for their inevitable reconciliation. She has convinced herself that they inherently belong together, a cosmic pairing that was only temporarily derailed by outside circumstances. Leslie's ultimate dream, the one she plays on a loop in her mind, is that they can reunite and magically reform the perfect, unbroken family unit with their daughter Eva, exactly as it was in the very beginning. She wants to erase the years of trauma, separation, and growth, replacing them with a pristine, idealized version of the past. However, the harsh reality of the present situation stands in stark contrast to Leslie's carefully constructed daydreams. Ted has completely moved on from the chaotic dynamic he once shared with Leslie. He is currently in a committed, stable relationship with Shanice. Shanice represents a new chapter for Ted, one characterized by mutual respect, forward momentum, and a distinct lack of the emotional manipulation that defined his time with Leslie. Ted is not sitting around waiting for his former flame to realize they are meant to be. He is actively building a future with someone else. He has found a sense of grounding with Shanice that he never quite achieved in his previous relationships, making Leslie's hopes of a reunion not just unlikely, but entirely detached from reality. Furthermore, the dynamic concerning their daughter Eva has drastically shifted. Eva is no longer the little girl who desperately needs her parents to live under the same roof to feel secure. Eva is now an independent adult, forging her own path, and she is currently in a strong, supportive relationship with Isaiah. Isaiah provides Eva with the kind of unconditional support and modern partnership that allows her to thrive on her own terms. Eva has explicitly made it clear through her actions and her lifestyle that she does not need her parents to be together to validate her own existence or happiness. She has outgrown the childhood fantasy of the reunited nuclear family, leaving Leslie as the sole person clinging to this outdated and impossible dream. Because Leslie's dream is so profoundly unrealistic, her refusal to let go is actively poisoning her present. The energy she expends on trying to manifest a reunion with Ted is preventing her from discovering her own independent joy. The narrative is heavily pointing toward the fact that continuing with her own separate life, finding her own passions, and healing her own wounds is the only path that can bring positive and beautiful things into her world. If she can manage to release this toxic grip on the past, it would not only lead to her own liberation, but would also result in a much healthier, happier environment for everyone in her orbit, especially Eva. The catalyst for this massive emotional shift is going to come directly from Ava. Eva is preparing to deliver a reality check that will undoubtedly shake Leslie to her absolute core. For months, Leslie has been consumed by her obsession with the past, and this obsession has manifested in a deeply controlling attitude toward Eva's life choices. Leslie views Eva not as a fully formed adult, but as the remaining connective tissue between herself and Ted, a pawn in her grand strategy to pull the family back together. This controlling nature recently reached a boiling point regarding Eva's personal medical decisions. When Eva decided to undergo plastic surgery, Leslie panicked. Instead of supporting her daughter or trying to understand her motivations, Leslie immediately reverted to her old manipulative tactics. She desperately tried to convince Ted to step in, use his parental authority, and intervene to stop the surgery. Leslie wanted to manufacture a crisis where she and Ted would have to unite as a parental front, thereby forcing them into close emotional proximity. However, Ted firmly refused. He recognized Eva's autonomy and refused to be weaponized by Leslie, leaving Leslie frustrated and her manipulative scheme completely dismantled. This incident over the plastic surgery has set the stage for a massive confrontation. Eva is highly likely to hit every single one of Leslie's emotional weak points during this impending argument. Eva knows exactly where her mother's vulnerabilities lie. Her unresolved past, the deeply flawed and often unfair way she has treated Eva over the years, and most importantly, the pathetic reality that Leslie is still harboring ancient expectations regarding Ted. Eva is no longer willing to coddle her mother's delusions. She is ready to speak the harsh, unvarnished truth that Leslie has spent years avoiding. When Eva finally unleashes these truths, she will say the exact things that Leslie has been terrified to hear. This verbal barrage will cause Leslie to completely lose her composure. The carefully maintained facade of the hopeful, loving mother waiting for her family to reunite will shatter, exposing the raw, desperate denial underneath. Losing her temper will be the breaking point that forces Leslie to look inward. Stripped of her delusions and faced with the anger of her own daughter, Leslie will have no choice but to critically examine the poor choices she has made and the toxic holding pattern she has trapped herself in. What makes this upcoming dynamic so incredibly fascinating is the profound evolution of Eva's character. For years, within the narrative structure of the show, Eva functioned primarily as a plot device, the literal and figurative child that kept Ted and Leslie permanently tethered to one another. But Eva has endured her own severe trials. After surviving significant health crises and enduring the emotional toll of her family's instability, she has emerged completely transformed. Her new life with Isaiah has given her the confidence to establish firm boundaries. Eva is finally stepping into her own power, beginning to decisively dictate what she wants for her own life, free from the shadow of her parents' historical baggage. In this explosive confrontation, Eva will not be standing alone. Isaiah will be right by her side, representing a united front against Leslie's overbearing interference. Together, Eva and Isaiah are prepared to articulate the difficult, uncomfortable truths that the family has danced around for years. They represent the healthy, forward-moving future, standing in direct opposition to Leslie's stagnant, past-obsessed present. Isaiah's presence will underscore the fact that Eva has created her own family dynamic, one that does not require Leslie's micromanagement or Ted's constant intervention. The absolute climax of this emotional storyline will center around one specific devastating truth that Eva will deliver straight to Leslie's face. It is a truth so sharp and undeniable that it will cut through years of Leslie's psychological armor. Eva will look her mother in the eye and state plainly, The fact that Ted is her biological father does absolutely nothing to mean that Ted and Leslie are destined to get back together. It is a brilliant separation of concepts that Leslie has spent a decade blurring together. Eva will declare that her relationship with her father is entirely independent of Leslie's romantic desires. This single statement is the ultimate emotional wrecking ball. It completely invalidates Leslie's entire strategy and her core justification for holding on. For Leslie, Eva was the living proof that she and Ted were meant to be. By Eva herself severing that connection by stating that her existence is not a romantic tiebreaker for her parents, Leslie is left with absolutely nothing to cling to. The realization that Ted's role as a father does not equate to a role as Leslie's partner will be the bitterest pill Leslie has ever had to swallow. The aftermath of this confrontation will be a monumental turning point in the series. Watching Leslie process this profound rejection of her fantasy will be a masterclass in emotional storytelling. She will have to grieve the loss of a future that was never actually going to happen. The initial reaction will undoubtedly be one of intense anger, denial, and profound sorrow. She will feel abandoned not just by Ted, but by the daughter she thought would always be her ally in reuniting the family. However, this breakdown is an absolute necessity for any future breakthrough. Once the dust settles and the tears dry, Leslie will be standing at a crossroads. The destruction of her fantasy is actually the greatest gift Eva could have ever given her. Without the heavy, suffocating burden of trying to win Ted back, Leslie's future is suddenly a blank canvas. She can finally begin the arduous but rewarding journey of self-discovery. She can learn to interact with Ted as a co-parent and a friend rather than a target. She can begin to respect Eva as an autonomous adult rather than an extension of her own desires. Most importantly, she can finally open her heart to the possibility of a new life, a new love, and a new version of happiness that is rooted in the reality of the present rather than the ghosts of the past. The road ahead for Leslie is incredibly daunting, but for the first time in years, it is a road that actually leads somewhere beautiful.